dokie. Going live right now. And it's buffering, but maybe it's already live. And we will see in a second. It says that we're live, so I'm just going to presume we're live there. I am pretty excited about this topic today. And I'm excited because I've been covering this topic for all the way through these hearings. This is, of course, the Kleiman versus Craig Wright case. It's the case where he was forced to disclose all of his Bitcoin public keys, I believe was the actual order. And then it's ongoing saga. And then the judge threatened to put him in handcuffs, and then the judge says that he was not acting in good faith and that it provided fraudulent document. Like, it's this ongoing saga. So we've come to the final verdict of this case. It may not be the final word because there may be some pushback, there may be some appeals, they will have to see what happens. But today we're going to talk about what the judge has just announced in response to the Kleiman versus Craig Wright case. And to discuss this, I am delighted to have on the show Katie Ananina. Welcome to the show, Katie.
Thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
No, it's wonderful to have you here. If you guys haven't checked out Katie's stuff, then she is kind of this meme on the internet. She's known for this site called bitcoin.com. It's not what you think. She is this parody account where she plays this heiress of this wealthy banking family, and you know, she's devastated because she's losing all of her money because of Bitcoin. Damn Bitcoin. So yeah, check that out. I'll add a link in the description. But Katie, more importantly, you attended all 3 days of the hearing for the Kleiman versus Wright case. You were there in the courtroom. You witnessed the tears. Let's go through some of the things that happened. And let's talk a little bit about this final verdict. So the judge announced yesterday that they've come to a decision, and basically it seems that Craig has to forfeit half of all Bitcoins that he mined prior to 2014. He has to forfeit half of his intellectual property, and he has to pay the legal fees of the Kleiman side. But it's all very confusing because we never throughout the court case revealed how much Bitcoin Craig actually has in his possession. He never revealed his keys. So do we even really understand the outcome of this case?
Yeah, so by saying 50% of the mined coins, they actually have a real number under that. It's going to be around 400,000 Bitcoins, which is really big money. And I'm pretty much sure that Craig doesn't really have any of those. He also loses 50% of intellectual property that was filed prior the David Kleiman's death. And legal fees are probably going to be pretty high, somewhere around $1 million, I would estimate, but you know, you never know. Yeah, I've been to all 3 hearings and they all were like so different. The first one, for the first time I've seen Craig Wright in person, and you know, he was crying, he was throwing papers in the air. And it was quite emotional. That was crazy. I was like, you saying that you're getting your PhD in law right now and you're throwing papers in a court? Okay. So it was pretty emotional. The second hearing was quite interesting for all of us nerds, but it was really emotional.
Oh, no, you cut out a little bit there. You're cutting out slightly there. So you're saying that the second day was interesting. It was unemotional. Craig Wright was not there. So that's the day I actually covered that day in a live stream I did about a week ago from the mountains in Colorado, where it basically talked to the CEO of BitMessage about how Craig Wright backdated messages in BitMessage to prior to where BitMessage even was invented. So that was interesting. So talk to us more about some of these things that happened in the courtroom.
So the second day was really interesting for all of us nerds because we were going through lines of metadata and how he forged all those documents, such as like BitMessage. He somehow texted through BitMessage before it was invented or being live.
That's incredible that he has time machine capabilities like that.
Yeah, and how he sent emails, and so the thing is, he sent an email in 2017 and then changed the date, in 2014, and then he changed the date that it was 2011, but he forgot to change the date of the week. So it was supposed to be changed from Friday to Thursday, but you know, this is a little detail you might forget about. So he did.
Oh, there's so many things. And so basically the judge at the end of that day was making pronouncements about the evidence that was put forward and saying that, listen, this is clearly fraudulent evidence that has been put forward. And then let's talk about the report from yesterday as well, because it's just, if you want an overview of this case, you can either go to Katie's Twitter page where there's just like a brilliant summary. She was live tweeting and getting into trouble. Let's talk about that in a little bit as well, about getting into trouble about live tweeting this stuff. But you can check that out. I've done a bunch of live streams, but the order put out yesterday, released yesterday by the judge, also has a brilliant recap that kind of goes through it all. So let's talk a little bit. First of all, let's talk about the actual order. 2 points that they mention in this, and I know that there have been some BSV people, and Calvin Ayre in particular made this tweet where he's like, oh, Craig has been announced as Satoshi officially by the courts. I'm not sure where he got that from, because if we actually look at what the order says, 2 preliminary points. First, the court is not required to decide and does not decide whether defendant Dr. Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of the Bitcoin cybercurrency. The court is also not required to decide and does not decide how much Bitcoin, if any, Dr. Wright controls today. For purposes of this proceeding, the court accepts Dr. Wright's representation that he controlled directly or indirectly some Bitcoin on December 31st, 2013, and that he continues to control some today. So it's very interesting. Like, I think it adds some strange nuance and cloudiness to this decision, because on the one hand, they're saying, like, we are forcing you to give half of this stuff to the Kleiman estate. But then they don't know how much is being given. They're not making decisions on that. And they're not making any pronouncement on whether or not he is Satoshi Nakamoto. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on all of this, Katie?
So the court decision is not about Satoshi coins at all, and it's never been about those coins. No one cares about this 1 million of coins. The court order is about the coins mined between 2010 to August 2011, and supposedly it's around 821,000 Bitcoins. And this is what the order is about. So it's never been about deciding either he is Satoshi or not. Court never actually cared. So it's only about the mined coins. And I'm not sure, still not sure where they got this number from. Like, all those mined coins, I'm pretty sure it came from Craig Wright, but it's just impossible to figure out everything in this case. So much lies.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, so when you were at the hearing, you were one of the primary sources that I was going to for my information, because we knew that this was going on. We knew that he was ordered to appear in court to figure out whether or not he was in contempt of court. That was the whole reason for having, I just got chocolate in my crypto dispenser. This is the greatest day ever. All right, so just gonna eat some chocolate here, guys. Whoever sent that through, I love you for forever, because these chocolate bullets are like my favorite thing. So I'm just going to eat chocolate and chat about this. That was terrifying and delightful at the same time. What was I even saying? Oh yeah, you're my primary source. So we were all watching this saying,
the
like,
last day of hearing.
Yeah, he's been ordered to appear he's potentially in contempt of court. He hasn't provided his Bitcoin addresses. What's going to happen? And there's just like, you just don't know what's happening behind closed doors, because it's not like there's a live stream of someone on camera, or like a live testimony or anything. And so it's people like you going back and tweeting and saying, this is what I remember, these are things he said, blah, blah, blah. So you were like one of the primary go-tos for people about this case. Talk to me about being in the courtroom that day, and talk to me about in particular, you got into trouble for doing this. So let's discuss.
Yeah, at first 2 hearings, it was like 7-8 people in the audience. We had some media presented there, and I really got in trouble. So the court pictures, court signs say no pictures in a courtroom. But then at the first floor, you kind of go through an X-ray machine, and I just put, like, I had my phone in my jacket. I put the jacket in the X-ray machine. It went through, and I was like, okay, they didn't tell me a thing, right? So I can go. So I didn't tweet through in the courtroom. I would go out, go to the bathroom, tweet everything, and come back to the room. So what happened is at the very end of the first day of hearing, one of the I think you're muted.
I know. I just got more chocolate there, and it's really exciting. I'm gonna get really fat in this stream. Sorry, you're talking about way more interesting things, but this chocolate dispenser
This is
is the
amazing
greatest
chocolate.
addition to my life that I've ever had. Sorry. So
It's
you got
okay.
in trouble that you're talking about you couldn't have the video, but you were there. So did you have your phone in the courtroom?
Yeah, I actually did. And I was like typing on my notes,
Were
but
you
no one could
allowed
actually
to,
see it.
or because generally they don't let you take phones in?
Yeah, you can't really bring your phone into the courthouse at all. Now I know for sure. I might have not known about that before.
But don't they stop you like as you go in, and they're like metal detectors and things? I know that when I went to the Russell Richt hearing, like I couldn't take anything in. I couldn't even take like pencil and paper in. It was really frustrating, actually.
It's pretty much like TSA process. You go through the frame, you put your phone, you put your jacket, you put everything into the X-ray machine, and it goes through. And they didn't tell me a thing because there are different ways to go through X-ray machine with a phone, but that I might be aware of it or might not be. So the problem is one of the defendant's lawyer was actually on Twitter following me, and then he figured out that I was tweeting through the whole time. So he went to the judge and was like, we have someone live tweeting from here. And this moment I realized the judge and him are looking at me. So I actually got up. I tried to I'm going out of this room. I'm sorry. But at the first floor, again, court guards caught me by hand, threw me on the bench, and were like,
"What? You got handcuffed?"
No, he just grabbed me by hand, threw me in the bench, and was like, "Don't move. If you don't wanna have problems, just don't move." Then two of them put me back in the courtroom, and I actually got into the transcript because judge was talking to me, and I was behind the same scene as Craig Wright before was giving his testimonies. So I got in there and I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm not from here. I'm an immigrant. I don't really know your stuff.
Sorry, I do not speak your language. Oh, no understand." It's like, you seem to be tweeting in perfect English there, Katie. What's going on here?
My Russian accent was pretty good at this time. And I was like, "I'm sorry, I'm not really native speaker." And he's like, "No, it's fine.
Custom, very strange. In Russia, phone take you.
That's pretty much how it was. And judge was really nice to me. He actually said that I'm very welcome to come back next time without a phone. And I'm like, "I promise I'm not going to get in trouble anymore." So next time I got in the hearing, and it was 7 of us in the audience. 6 of us were BSV supporters, believers that Craig Wright is Satoshi. So I was like, I don't feel safe right now.
No. Oh gosh. So after you you continued coverage though, after they talked to you about live tweeting. So were you taking notes and then talking about after you were like running out of the room saying like, "What do I remember?"
Yeah, pretty much. So I actually took a train to get there, so I didn't have my car in Florida at this time. But a videographer from CoinDesk was sitting outside the courthouse through the whole day, and he was
you cut out.
taking care of my stuff. Go downstairs, read something.
Say that again. So the videographer, the videographer was there.
Yeah, CoinDesk videographer was outside of the courthouse, and he would take care of my stuff. So I would run out every break, tweet something, come back.
That is so funny. That's hilarious. So yeah, your account of what was going on there really was a primary resource for people hearing about what happened there. So thank you so much for that coverage there. And now let's go back over some of the things that they talked about in the order, because they really document all of the fraudulent evidence that was put forward, and they do it in a really great summary of all of this. And whoever's sending the chocolate honestly, this is the greatest thing to ever happen in my life. So anyway, maybe next time if we have like a saga like this, maybe I should have popcorn in the dispenser, because this is like a popcorn show. This is like, oh, and then what happened? Oh, and then they threw you on the bench. Oh, this is it's kind of interesting. Oh, then he threw the papers up in the air and the judge threatened to throw him in cuffs. All right, so I'm going to scroll through here because there were some interesting things that I wanted to bring up. Okay. All right. So the court ruled that the plaintiffs were entitled to a list of Dr. Wright's Bitcoin holdings.
That's right.
And then Craig filed a motion saying there was an undue burden. And so then they changed that and said, well, only it doesn't get old. Then they changed it to say, well, okay, only the holdings up until 2014. Up until 2014, and that's all you need to provide. Then he said, well, that's still an undue burden. But the issue is like not whether or not it's an undue burden. The issue is that there were all these conflicting statements about these addresses. And at the one time he says, well, he has no idea of what's in there. And the other side, then he says, well, I can't provide this because it would be bad for my safety. It would disclose too much information about me. People would be able to track that and find out all, information about my purchases, etc. And then he's saying that, oh, well, I actually can't access this because it's in a blind trust. And so there were all these different accounts of why this couldn't be provided. And at the end of all of this, he never provided any clarity as to which one was the actual thing, right?
Yeah. What's interesting is yesterday at the closing speech, the defendant's lawyer said, we are all about credibility. We want you to trust us. We are trying all our best to be truthful here and just provide as much information as we can. And that's what kind of pissed off the judge, because he was like, wait a second, you're talking about credibility right now. But what I want to mention is your motion that was filed 3 weeks before the testimonies that Craig Wright swore on, they completely contradict each other. And so either your motion is a lie or his testimonies that he swore on is a lie. And she was like, we're sorry, we didn't have enough information. This is such a complex topic. We didn't have enough knowledge about the Bitcoin at all. And it totally pissed off the judge. He's like, don't tell me about your credibility while you literally change your story every time. So in the motion, they filed that Dave Kleiman did not know what is in a trust. He was just setting up the Shamir scheme for that, but he had no idea what is in a trust, what he has access to, what are the keys for. But then 3 weeks later, Craig Wright comes up and saying, I actually was talked out of destroying my coins by Dave Kleiman, and he actually proposed me this idea of Shamir scheme and all those 15 keys.
Yeah, and what was the atmosphere like in the courtroom when, for example, they're providing this documentation? Because I know there was some back and forth where he would be given a document and then he'd say, like, I've never seen this before. And then they'd say, it was your side that provided this. Like, what was all of that atmosphere like? And just talk me through the judge's exasperation, because it comes through very clearly in the text. I mean, the last thing that she put out, like she's quoting someone saying like, oh, the webs we weave when we tell lies, or something like that. So clearly she was unimpressed. And I just want to kind of get an understanding of what the atmosphere was like in the courtroom. Was everyone listening to this stuff going, what? Like, is this serious?
So the judge was...
Oh no, you cut out again. All right, as an interlude, while we wait for Katie to come back, I'm going to just eat some chocolate. All right, I think you're back.
Am I here? Yeah. So the judge actually is male. It's him. So at first 2 hearings, he was just very calm, very curious about what's going on. He was asking questions about the technology. He actually figured out a lot of cool stuff about crypto. I hope he gonna buy some at this point. But at the 3rd hearing, he actually showed some emotions. He was pretty like, you are not honored to the court, and it's gonna piss off the judge for sure. And when you like saying how important it is to be credible by actually submitting contradictory information. So, oh, you know what I actually wanted to mention? It was a cool thing about the judge. No one actually mentioned it before. So at one of the hearings, at testimonies, actually, Craig Wright said that I not only need 8 out of 15 keys to get into this file, I also need the order to put my keys in the right position, because at the very end, the judge is like, I actually read the Shamir's paper. It is not a feature of the Shamir scheme. So I was like, wow. I wonder why no one said it before, because everyone went through the testimonies, and the judge himself found this information. He actually read the Shamir's paper. I was like, okay,
That
fine.
is so
I
good.
like this guy.
Yeah, no, it was very clear. I'm just like licking my fingers now. It's terribly professional of me. So I reading through, it was very clear that this judge got it. Like, I was so worried because I'm like, when Craig is saying, well, I'm not going to sign anything, why should I do that? I'm going to let the courts decide. It's like, why would Satoshi want the courts to decide something when he clearly created a system so that we don't have to rely on people that are easily corrupted? Anyway, so it's like fascinating that he would say, like, I'm going to rely on this court to decide, and all of this, that's the only real way to do it. And I was terrified. I was like, what if we get a judge who doesn't really get this? What if we get, like, if there's a jury that doesn't get this? Like, I was just worried because this is a complex topic, and people who've been in the space for years have trouble getting this stuff. And so explaining this complex system and really understanding to a point where you can make a verdict about all of this worried me. And just reading the judges' responses, that they clearly understood what was going on and were not buying any of this. And it's this idea of, you muddy the waters to make it look deep, right? When someone's trying to get something over you, they try to make it more complex than it is and try to confuse you. And that's how so many people get by in all of this. Like, oh, well, Greg's just playing 25-dimensional chess, and it's all part of the plan, and it's all this very complex thing that you don't understand because you're not smart enough. So I really liked that she saw through that, and she's like, you need to talk to your client. You need to make sure that he's answering the questions directly, because this does not fly in my courtroom. And then in the paper, actually goes through and just it talks about how that the changing testimonies, the obfuscation in answering the questions, not really answering directly, answering around questions, all of that. I was very impressed with this process.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Both judge and the plaintiff's lawyer dove deep into the technology, and they were like actually knowledgeable, going through the lines of metadata. It's definitely not something I would expect from our system. And even so, I really want to mention that even so, the outcome is kind of cool. Like, we all agree that he's not a fair person. He's not a truthful guy. He's not someone to trust. I still think the traditional justice system is not something that can handle this kind of cases at all. We definitely need something much better. It's just not there. They spend so much resources, they put so much effort just to understand the technology to an extent to make sure they can come up with any kind of decision.
Yeah. So what happens now with all of this? So this goes to like, potentially, I presume they're going to appeal it. Is there a deadline by which date he has to pay Kleiman? When does he have to pay the legal fees? Is that something that happens immediately?
I believe there is going to be a settlement still that they're going to come up with. He's probably going to pay legal fees pretty soon, and I'm sure he has this kind of money. He for sure will give 50% of the patents, because that's something he has.
But are they patents on Bitcoin?
I think we'll just do some kind of monthly. Yeah.
So what,
who cares about those patents? Yeah.
I mean, that's so ridiculous in itself. Like, how can you have patents on something that is this open source license attached to it? And I don't know, it's a bit crazy.
Yeah, I think those patents worth nothing pretty much, so no one cares about those. But I think they're just going to come up with some kind of monthly payment and keep paying Ira for the rest of their lives, because that's what the order is.
Yeah, indeed. So is there anything else from what was produced yesterday that you wanted to go through? I might do like another stream where I go through it like step by step and actually lay it all out from start to finish. But for you, I mean, you were there in the courtroom, you heard everything going down. I mean, was there because I presume there were people from the BSV side, as you mentioned, but were there people who weren't BSV supporters and who were sort of enjoying the spectacle? Because I imagine I would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was quite entertaining. I don't know why not so many people showed up. Like, for example, the last hearing, it was just two of us, me and the BSV guy, just two of us. And Craig Wright was there. There was no media at all. Yeah.
That's
And I
crazy.
was like, why? Uh-huh.
I should have flown
So
down there. I would have loved to have seen all this take place.
yeah, that was really cool, and I'm really glad I get to see it myself, because it's still a history. Even so, he doesn't deserve that much attention as a person, but it's still a history, and he's been around the community all over. So I'm glad I got to see it. I had to stay 5 extra weeks in Florida just to visit both of those hearings. It was not the plan before, but it definitely worth it.
It seems that way. And I hope that you're going to be putting together an account from start to finish of all the things you remember, and maybe like in a blog. If you do, let me know so that I can tweet that out to people, because yeah, you provided some great insight to what was going on in the courtroom there. One person in the chat has mentioned, and it's a great point. So Cryptology says that shouldn't he be jailed for lying under oath? Like, I'm very interested in that. He seemed to perjure himself in the courtroom and made all these conflicting statements. So I just wonder what's going to happen with that. What are the repercussions of that taking place?
I think it's gonna take place somewhere. And oh, by the way, he also said an F word in a courtroom. It was pretty hilarious.
Oh my God. Wowzers.
I think someone might actually start working on this case too. That he's just a fraudster. And I've seen people on Twitter talking about like a group case from all the people who he scammed. So maybe we all as a community come up with some new cases for him, and let's see how that goes, because we all tired of that. And I actually got on BSV channel yesterday and listened to them live, and I was like, these people just delusional for real. They just come up with some impossible scenario, and then they play it out in their heads like, oh, this is how it's gonna happen. And I'm like, everything is wrong at this statement. And then they celebrate it like it actually happened. And I'm like, what's going on in those heads? Like, where does he get information from? This is not my universe for sure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's so funny how people, if they take something so personally and if they have so much invested in it, it's like losing part of their personality if they're proved wrong. So they will go to any length to retroactively justify something or to create some reason why something occurred. Like when like Calvin Ayre celebrating this victory and saying, see, it's all part of the plan. Now the courts have said that he is Satoshi, and it's just completely false. And when people were saying that, oh, well, with the bit message, the reason it's backdated, it's not because they lie, it's because someone probably hacked the creator of bit message's computer and then released a different version, coded it up and then released a different version earlier. And somehow the creator of this never found out about this, never saw anyone using this, never heard of anything like this happen. And they happened to take his bit message code rather than the crypto that was also stored on his computer. Like, all of this stuff, it kind of you get so deep there, and there's a point in time where you just have to cut it off and you have to say, listen, maybe I got it wrong, and Roger Ver did that. Roger Ver was in pretty deep, and everyone I know who's in BCH was kind of like, why is he aligning himself with Craig Wright? And that was kind of a bit shocking. And then eventually he came out and said, I got it wrong, I got duped. And I think that's okay. And I think more people who are seeing the red flags and all the flaws in his logic and his arguments need to maybe take a step back and just say, okay, something's not adding up here. Maybe I need to check my premises. Like, is there somewhere that I'm going wrong here that made me come to this false conclusion?
Yeah.
But thank you so much for being there and for chatting and providing this amazing information. As I said, I will share a link to the blog if you wanted to write up about any of this stuff, what it was like in the courtroom there. Some people in the chat are talking about how it's kind of exciting to be witnessing history firsthand. I do think that all of this stuff is just so interesting, part of the story of Bitcoin being created, part of the journey that we have of having this decentralized money. Craig Wright has become this very prominent figure for some reason, and so it is interesting just seeing all this play out. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing to be part of that.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. I really like to share this experience. So
yeah, let's have you back on, and we'll chat some more about everything going on, and when we hear about the appeals and all of that stuff. And huge thank you to everyone who's tuned in the chat there, and even bigger thank you to all the people who sent me chocolate. This bowl is there to catch it because it just like falls. It's like the most embarrassing thing ever when the chocolate comes out and it just goes all over the floor. So it's like, I'm like one of those chickens in Spencer Lambert's stream where he filmed his chicken coop and the chickens just come running and they're like pecking the ground. That's like me with these things without this bowl, because I'm just like scavenging on the floor for chocolate. It's ridiculous. So yeah, this is going back here. This is going in my thingy there. Oh, I just lost Katie. She's gone. All right. Well, we're leaving now anyway. So thank you all, everyone, for tuning in. It's been lovely having you all here, and I will chat to you later. Bye. Ta-da.